Okay, so I've got this model set up, and I'm going to go to a 3D view just so you can see all of the geometry there. And I might delete that thing. So this is at the angle that I want to print, and I'll actually go to my default view, which is the 3D in brackets. And when you make a 3D view using the house, which is the button on the quick access toolbar there, the default 3D view button, that's what it'll give you. It'll always give it that name, 3D in the funny curly brackets, parentheses, whatever they are. And so that's the default name for a 3D view. But you can right click on that any time and rename it. And I'll do this. So I'm going to call it isometric. Oh no, sorry, let's call it what Chris is calling it, axonometric. Axonometric. Okay, so axonometric 1, because I'll have a few of them probably. Or I could even label it better than that and call it axonometric south-west. Okay, so if you've forgotten how to tell the direction of the view, remember you've got the compass points in the view cube. So it's got the new view there under 3D views. And something interesting will happen then if you click on the 3D house after that, then it'll make a new view with that default name, 3D in brackets. So if you're wondering how to make extra 3D views, that's one way. So I'll do the same thing again. I'll rename this view and we'll call it axonometric southeast. Okay, so I've got two views now with their own unique names. And so I just need to maybe decide which one I want to print. So this is the one I'll go with. And then you can see, like I was saying before, you've got the view options. And scale there is the most important one. So do you have an idea what scale you might typically have these views at? Yeah, either of those, yeah. 1 to 100, 1 to 50 is fine for these kinds of drawings. So I'll do it 1 to 100 just to fit it onto the page I want. And so it's important to realise that the scale sets the size of this thing, and so that relates to the paper size. The detail level, don't worry too much about that at first, but it can be worth trying the different options there. With 3D, they're not going to make much of a difference, but with plan you'll see they will. And then the main one is your shading or your visual style, basically the shading type. So you've looked at wireframe, hidden line, and options like shading and all those others. So even though you'll be doing the rendering with Chris in Photoshop, it can help sometimes to have these just flat surfaces, give you a bit of shading to start with. And remember, you'll have Revit in the class with Chris next week, so you can always just make these views again quickly if you want to try something different. So I've got I'm just going to set the hidden line, and then I've got shadows on. Don't worry about the sun, but shadows you could have on, and it's an easy way of getting automatic shadows, but I'll turn mine off as well. So you've got to think about all of those things, and the way you set it up here, again, is what you'll get when you print. So now I'm just going to go to the main menu and then print. And then you'll see you'll have in here the Adobe PDF converter. So it's a virtual printer. If you haven't used these very much before, it is just like choosing a printer, but instead of making a printout, it'll make a file, which looks the same as the printout. That's actually the reason for the PDF format in the first place. I mean, portable document format. Okay, so if I go and click on the Setup button, you'll see it'll give me all sorts of options for printing. And this one here is the most important option. It's the one everyone forgets at first, and you need to change this pretty much every time you print. well, sorry, the first time you print from a project. After you do that, it'll save it, but then the first time, remember to do it. So, it's easy to forget, and you can tell straight away. Anyone who works with these sorts of drawings will pick you up on it straight away that it's not to scale. So you've probably seen fit to page. When you print from any program, that's a standard option to shrink it to the page you're printing on. But we don't want that because, well, how do we know the size? If I've got fit to page, but I've set, where else have we set the size? If I've, exactly the scale, that's right, it's spot on. So the scale sets the size. And so I don't want it fit to page afterwards because that'll change the size. So below that you've got zoom and just leave that on 100%. So that's probably the best tip I can give you. Remember that and it should make your prints work most of the time. But then the other option up the top is to choose center. So it centers within the page, not offset from the corner. Centered is generally better. And then finally, just for the 3D views, if you notice missing lines, set raster processing instead of vector processing. I'll leave it on vector processing so you can see the missing lines that I'll get. I know this one will give me some missing lines. And have you come across those terms before, vector and raster? It's a trick question because I know you have, but I'm just seeing if you remember. Chris probably has mentioned to you, yeah, exactly. So that's all I wanted to see, just that they're starting to ring a bell and you can remember these terms when you come across them. Don't worry if you're not totally across their meaning, but try to start thinking about those things. And if you've used graphics programs before, you probably have an idea what raster means anyway, and that's good if you do, because then you can really quickly build on that and go into vector. So anyhow, make sure you have an idea about those options and that you may need to try one or the other. Like I said, I'll go for vector, and then when you're asked to save changes or to save the settings that you've put into printing, don't worry about it. Just say no if you don't care about saving them. I don't. So I'm saying no, I don't really need to save those settings. And so I'm going to click OK now. And it'll ask me for a file name. Okay, so Anhauck axonometric is my file name, and there we go. It's just opened it in Acrobat, and don't worry about all this stuff that comes up with Acrobat. And then you can see it's done a pretty good job. But, like I was saying, some of the lines are missing. And that's purely to do with the way Revit does the line weights. And, well, don't want to get too far into that, but it's to do with the rendering process. And, so I'll just zoom back out. So if that happens, it's only going to happen with your 3D views. Just try that other option that I mentioned. So back to print, set up, try raster processing instead. And then again, just send it through to print. Okay, so then you can see this one is a little bit better. Okay, so that line there you can see is coming in there. I just don't want you to set raster for everything because raster generally isn't as good. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple more steps with some different kinds of views. In the plan view, I'm just going to bring back some things that I've hidden. Because that's more than likely how your plans will look at first. Maybe you don't have the grids, so I'll delete those, but you'll definitely have these elevation symbols and probably a section line and some other things that that you don't want. So, the best thing to do first, before you even go to print a view like this, is to, again, make a new view just for printing. So, with the 3D, I duplicated one of my 3D views and then gave it a name so that it was set up for printing. And I'm going to do that with the plan as well. Just by right-clicking on that plan ground floor, duplicate view, and as always, just choose duplicate with detailing every time if you're not sure. So now I've got copy of ground floor. I'll right-click and rename that and call it ground floor print. Ground floor 4 print, we'll call it. Okay, so I've got basically a copied view. It's exactly the same as the original ground floor plan at the moment, but I can select anything like the elevation symbols there, and then using that method I showed you before, right click, hide in view, and I'll just choose category, which will hide all of those elevation symbols, because they'll just get in the way. It makes the plan much, much bigger than it needs to be. We just want that, the part where the elements are. If you've got a section line, you can always adjust it by stretching the ends to make it the size of your plan. But you could also hide that if you like. So again, when you right click, you can either go to hide in view, elements or category. And it's a good thing to be practicing if you haven't tried that much yet. Try hiding and unhiding things. So elements I'll use, and then I'll just show you to bring some things back. Maybe I'll hide some of these other furniture and things that I've got. So I'll hide this person and my chairs over here. Okay, so now I might have decided, well, I actually want to have some of those things visible again. And you'll see down on the view control bar you have the light bulb, which will show you anything that's hidden in that highlighted pink or magenta colour. And when you select them, it'll show you, when my cursor comes back, it'll show you either by right-clicking, you can go to unhide view and either choose elements or category, or on the ribbon you'll get the same options. Okay, so I want to bring those seats back. I just need to select them all and then unhide element. Okay, so I'll click on the light bulb again now, and that'll go back to the original display mode. Okay, so it might seem like a lot of steps, but it's really just building on things you've been doing so far, and then the final thing now is to go and simply print it. So with this, with the plans, always use vector. Don't ever use raster, because it's not as good, and vector processing for the plans and the sections and other views is always going to work well. All the other settings there are fine. Again, I don't want to save it. Another tip I can give you is to try and do a preview every time you print. The more experienced people are, you'll see the more they check these things. It's only the people who aren't experienced who try and skip the preview and send it to print, and then realise when the paper's wrong that they made a mistake. It's better to see that in the preview. So my preview is okay. I'm just going to try and get it to print now. There we go. My recording software is getting in the way, so I'll just finish that one. And so I'll give this a name so I know it's for the plan. That'll do. I've only got that one level to begin with. Don't worry about all the Acrobat stuff that comes up. So you can see there the line work, if you remember from the 3D view, was a bit rough. Again, because with the way it hides things, but for the plans and all those regular architectural style views, it'll always have perfect line weights with, oh yeah, sure, with everything nicely cleaned up. And so that's what you need with Need for Chris, really. Aside from the elevation view. Oh, just as a PDF.
Oh, as a PDF.
Yep, no. And so here you can see I've got a south elevation, and because of my model, I'll just show you the 3D view again. Okay, so my model has the walls taken off on this side here and then on the other side, so I can view it from either of those sides in either my south, so I need to know that's south there, so looking from here, south, I can see most of my elements. But if I was looking at, say, north, it's basically going to be a rectangle because I'm just looking at the outside of a wall. So just try and get something in your elevations that is going to pick up the detail in your design. And so here, south is what I want. And so just remember, Chris wants you to do some elevations as well. And the levels there, you can see I've got probably a few more than you would, which I've just made to help me do things. I don't want them to show up though when I do my work in Photoshop. So what would you do if that's something that is happening to you? You'll have this. You'll have a lot of things that you want to leave there. You don't want to delete them, but you don't want them to print. Exactly. That's it. That's what I was getting at. Hide them. So here I'll just select those levels I don't want. Right click, hide in view. Either elements. Oh no, sorry, just elements, not category. And that's good enough for an elevation. I could even call this one ceiling, just to make it a bit neater. Okay, so now when I print that to a PDF, that's how it will look. Doesn't hurt to check the preview though. I'm happy with that, so okay, and I've got my 3 views done. So just remember, with Revit, it's all parametric. It's all meant to be adjustable as you're working. And so, in other words, if you realise that you needed to add some things to your plan after you start working in Photoshop or InDesign, there's no reason you can't just make the PDF again and then import that into your Photoshop file and replace the old one. So don't be afraid. I don't think you've got to hold off. No, that's the whole point. Keep it on its own layer and it won't.
Oh, really?
Yep. So that's the whole point of layers in Photoshop and InDesign. And so that makes it really easy to manage, and you'll have a layer for the PDF. And so really in Revit, just think about what you want on that layer when you get to Photoshop. And that's good. So I'll just finish that video. So you've got the steps there.